All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Morbius, the living vampire, a Sony Marvel universe movie, whatever this universe is called. My guest for the episode, Daniel from the movies, he tries to explain to me what it's all called. I can't keep up with any of this stuff, man, but I try. And we get into a whole bunch of puzzle pieces, and we got a great conversation coming up. Before we get to it, though, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also, of course, rate and review us while you're there, clicking on that subscribe button. And you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. We also have a Facebook group, the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces Facebook group, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And don't forget, we also have the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, as well as bonus content from Awesome Movie Year and from my music career. So lots of great stuff over there. Check it out. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. So with that said, let's try to make heads or tails of this Morbius situation. All right, Daniel Barrios from The Movies is here to talk about everybody's most anticipated movie of 2022. It's Morbius. Daniel, how's it going?
Doing all right, talking about the movie of 2022, 2021, 2020, and for some people, never, never anticipate this thing. But I wanted it, I hadn't seen a movie in forever, and then they said this movie was going to come in the screening. I said, you know what? I'm here for dumb. I'm here for like a wild Jared Leto performance. Give me all the nonsense.
Lower expectations are really going to help in your enjoyment of this movie. That is for sure, 100%. And this movie is dumb and it's a mess, but I didn't hate it. A lot of people really just kind of came for it with just straight up animosity and hate, like this is terrible, terrible, awful, and Jared Leto is terrible. And I don't know, I had fun with the silliness of it, and it'll be fun to talk about, getting into some puzzle pieces here. But before we get to them, though, did you know Morbius as a character?
I knew Morbius. I guess this will sort of introduce the first puzzle piece. Morbius in my brain comes from the Spider-Man TV show from the 90s, where they had this, the one where Peter Parker is supposed to be like 15, but he's designed like a 35-year-old jacked man. Like he looks a little bit like Chris Evans with a worse haircut. And they've got Morbius in there, and that, the Morbius on that show is doing like a pseudo Lugosi style accent, and he's really into the tortured side of his disease. But I remember he being like a really formidable foe to Spider-Man. Like his strength was enough, and he was also freaky, and the design was so goth. I think that was one of the things that struck me about him. Is like the first time really goth struck my lexicon. But Morbius was kind of like one of those like maybe C villains that showed up. He wasn't Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus, and then he wasn't even really Sandman or Shocker, like guys that would show up maybe a little bit more often. But whenever he showed up, he was cool. Okay. I still think it's strange that they decided to go for, like, of all the villains you've got in the Spider-Man oeuvre for solo movies, they didn't go with like a Doc Ock tragedy, or they didn't go with like hell, even Craven, I think, I don't know. Morbius just seems a little out of nowhere.
Yeah, which is supposedly coming. It is a weird choice, and especially a weird choice for making him basically a hero until, I mean, obviously we do all kinds of spoilers on the show. So, I mean, until the post-credit scenes, he is a straight-up hero in this movie. An anti-hero, I guess, but he's the good guy. And now he's going to be a bad guy, which I know is what he is in the comics, but, like, it's weird.
It's supposed to be this, like, anti-hero thing, and it never really gets anti-hero. Like, he's never really tested in a way that would make him make the wrong choice, essentially. Like, even when you get near the end, his whole deal is like, oh, we're consuming human blood. If I consume human blood, then I'm going to go crazy. At that point, it works almost like a fucked up Popeye spinach, Like
Yeah, yeah,
this is the way
sure.
he's supposed to go. Like he's given consent to do that, and so he never does
Yeah.
anything outright really villainous outside of just murdering a bunch of henchmen, mercenary on a boat thing. There's a part of me
Which we
that
don't
was
care about
thinking,
them.
there's a part of me that was thinking, in an alternate universe, the guys from Jaws are the ones like Richard Dreyfuss and Quinn are on the boat with Michael Morbius. Like Michael Morbius versus a shark would have been a kick-ass movie that I know it's gonna happen in like 2 years from now.
Oh, there's a lot of blood there. That's like a feast for
That's gonna be
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean he makes artificial blood. I mean there's only he's supposed to be this like super genius. Like I'm sure he could figure it out given enough time. Maybe kill and eat one or two people for their blood, but then he'll make his own artificial blood that doesn't run out of time, you know? Like he's a smart guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the world. Like in our world, we have like anticoag. What is it? He doesn't have enough anticoagulants,
Something like that.
or like
Yeah.
he needs something to where like his blood. Is it that his blood is keeps spilling out, and so he needs something to like hold it together?
Something like that. Yeah, it's like it's something in the taste buds or the tongue. I don't know, something like that.
It's something
Who
in the
knows?
genetic code and the goobly gobbledygook.
Do you think they even thought about any of that when writing this movie or no?
There was okay. I was watching the movie and I was trying to make sense of it because there's a part of me that's like, okay, we've got drugs like Plavix and Xarelto. Like we've got like blood thinners. So
Hmm.
shouldn't we have a blood thickener or a fattener or
Sure.
something of that nature? I was like, okay,
Yeah.
sure, I'll follow this a little bit. And as far as dumb pseudoscience goes, he's like, all right, bats have X. I need X. If I put bat X into my X, then I'm good, right? I'm like, yeah, sure,
It's
whatever.
sound.
It's a puzzle piece in and of itself.
There you
So
go. Yeah.
whatever. I'm fine with
Hmm.
that. And then the movie just abandons it. And I love how they
Sure.
abandon his whole artificial blood thing, which is like a revolutionary. Like, this guy should not be able to go out in public
Hmm.
without being, like Tony Stark grade successful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is the kind of thing, like he's got the Nobel Prize in the beginning of the movie, which he ditches in a total like pseudo Elon Musk move because I totally feel like Musk would do that,
Sure.
and
Sure.
like he should be completely one of those things where like the cops shouldn't have this much trouble finding him, but apparently it takes them a couple days
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like he's
Yeah.
Michael Morbius, he's like the biggest thing since Steve Jobs. Like I don't
Yeah.
understand how hard it is to find this fucking guy,
Yeah.
but
And he looks like Jared Leto with long hair and everything. So
yeah,
I mean, just
and he
look for that
looks like
guy.
Jared Leto. Is Jared Leto in in the Sony Pictures of Marvel What do they call it? The SSU now, Sony Spider-Man universe.
I didn't know that they call it that. That's a good name though.
Well, originally I think the internet had it as like SPUMC, but it sounded too much like spunk, and so it's like nah,
Spunko.
spunk. Yeah, it sounds like you're being dirty. So I think
That's
SSU would probably be an easier title.
that works a little better for sure. Yeah. Well, Spider-Man TV show, good piece. I'm gonna move on to my next piece, which there are gonna be a lot of superheroes in my puzzle pieces here because I mean this movie is very much like not even trying to be anything more than another superhero movie to add to the list. So I'm going to go the most obvious one, which would be Venom. Also the same alternate Sony, what did you say? SSU? That
I'm
that
gonna go
whole
with
thing.
SSU. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with that. But just the idea of pulling in these villains from the comic books and turning them into basically heroes, and kind of going for that Doritos Extreme Crunch brand of superhero badass action, And I wasn't a super big fan of the Venom movies, especially the second one. I think it was really bad. The first one was pretty fun. I mean, Tom Hardy is great, but both have great performances in just like a weird, messy movie, I think. But they work in their own kind of way, going for that kind of action and that kind of extreme attitude. So I know there's certainly an audience for that. I think it kind of blends into like a pro wrestling kind of an audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, man. If you're into Mountain Dew and watch, although I don't know if this would be more NXT or like Raw. I think in this case it'd probably be Raw. Like the one thing that this movie doesn't have over Venom is Tom Hardy. And Hardy is such a ballistic, take no prisoners, like I'm gonna do whatever choice feels fun to me. Like there's nothing in Morbius that is as kick ass as the lobster tank scene in Venom. In pure terms of absurdity. I haven't seen the second one yet. I need to, because that sounds amazing. The whole like love fest with Eddie and the symbiote. I'm down. Anyway, Venom was again one of those movies where I was like, okay, this is gonna be stupid. It's probably gonna be really bad, but it's gonna be so bad it's funny. And I ended up finding so much more charm in it, and I wasn't. It wasn't like, to bring it back, like the Spider-Man from the 90s, where like Venom was like a formidable, like really bulky Eddie Brock force. Looks like a big heavyweight dude. It's more of like this guy who looks like he's kind of being slowly sucked alive by this thing. And I'm like, okay, that's a really cool notion. Leto's got some charm too, but it's a different kind. It feels like exactly what it is, a loser trying to be a superhero. One of the good things I like about Leto is that he's playing this so insecure and trying to like puff himself up, like even to where he's like talking shit to the FBI guys. And even the way he talks shit, like it's such a like a Pilates joke in 2022. Okay. But that sounds like somebody who's, been stuck in a room for like a good portion of his childhood would like throw out. It's like a handsomer Sheldon Cooper in a weird sense.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting pull there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird character to do. But if you're going to play Morbius like that, you got to get Leto, who's built his entire brand off of puffing his ego when really his performances don't really have that much to show for it. At least in the later half of his career. We're talking like Suicide Squad, less Requiem for a Dream.
Right, absolutely. Well, let's move on to some more pieces. What do you got for your next one?
I think my obvious one is Blade. Just because we're dealing with vampires, the MCU, Blade fights Morbius in the films. I think they're aiming for more of like the goth tinted horror edge of Blade. But Blade just, for one, it's rated R. So, and it's so strange how tame Morbius is. Like people get slashed, but you like barely see any blood at all. Like, of course, the fake blood is like luminescent. It's like the Baja Blast of blood. But in Blade, I mean, watching those opening sequences back to back, I mean, Morbius is just shot in such a like physically dark, like difficult to see.
Sure.
And it's cool if you want to do a monster reveal, but God, the reveal of Blade and having him like fight in this goth club with all the blood and the gun and the special effects, like it's just a different type of filmmaking style where you can see the guy being dragged by the wire as he's shot with a shotgun mixed in with some CGI effects. Whereas here, the CGI effects so consume more often than not that you kind of lose all personality. But
you were just talking about how Jared Leto is like posturing the whole time. Blade is effortlessly cool, like just nonstop cool, beginning to end. And I haven't seen those movies in forever, like since they first came out. But yeah, definitely that kind of a vibe is I think what they're going for. But missing the R rating is a major problem for this particular style of movie. And then, Jared Leto, I mean, I think he's good when he's good, but he's not cool. He just doesn't portray cool.
Exactly. They're trying to lean in towards Blade's and Wesley Snipes' coolness, but that's not the character of Morbius. Morbius is more adjacent to somebody like Mr. Freeze, for example. Like it needs to be more, I think, tragic. It needs to be something that's not like we're going to celebrate his cool powers in a montage to see what he can do, but
Yeah.
instead, like him stumbling upon this type of stuff. Like it needs to be like a Morbius movie honestly needs to be set in like maybe like 18th century as he's like walking around an apothecary trying to fix, his disease and then goes into a Victorian style street and accidentally kills somebody because he just feels the bloodlust. Like there
Sure,
needs to
sure.
be more of that yearning, that difficulty, that like struggle to
Yeah.
not be a vampire. But in this one, it's treated with superhero rules, which
Yeah.
is your own cup of tea, but you can't really have those two flavors to make it make sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense there. And I'm just gonna jump right on top of your Blade puzzle piece and go with the Underworld film series for my next
Oh, fuck
piece.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that whole thing. I mean, blending all the dark fantasy and vampires, werewolves, everything else that goes along with it. And Morbius operates somewhere in between all of those kinds of classic monster archetypes, and kind of picks and chooses what it wants us to use, like various powers, various weaknesses, and again, going for that whole badassness, the extremeness, all that kind of stuff is, I think, kind of the main push for this kind of a movie. And whether it's successful, not exactly the point. That's what they're going for, I think.
Yeah, the push for the underworld movies to kind of just I think the one thing that I have about the Underworld series where this movie doesn't nail it is just the sincerity. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel Underworld is written by somebody who wanted to see a movie like Underworld with like
yeah,
werewolves and vampires. Like every person that wrote a vampire werewolf slash fic or whatever online wanted to
yeah,
make a movie
yeah.
like Underworld. Whereas Morbius just feels like this Frankenstein monster constructed of all these elements. But
Yes.
there is one. There's a scene in one of the newer Underworlds. It's with the one with Theo James in it from Divergent and the upcoming Time Traveler's Wife remake.
Mm.
Yeah, by the way, that's a fucking thing. Anyway, there's like he got shot and there's like a zoom in x-ray of the bullet and the bullet has a little motor that's slowly headed towards his heart, and
Oh,
that's the
nice.
kind of like sci-fi ridiculousness I really needed from a Morbius. Like I want Morbius to like be playing around with like titanium stakes that are boomeranged or like nunchucks that have
Yeah.
like holy water on them, like something like that would
Well,
have
we
been
get
kick ass.
those two or maybe three super slow down action sequences that, like, they last all of 5 seconds apiece, but there we're kind of like dipping into that territory, but that's it
Yeah,
for the whole runtime.
yeah.
Well, what do you got for your next piece?
I thought about this as you were talking. There's the Dracula Untold from 2014. They've
Sure.
tried doing the vampire superhero thing, and they did it better with
Luke
Luke
Evans.
Evans.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they did it with him, and that had more of the elements of the horror. I don't even think that one was rated R, but it did get a little bit more violent. It had more of the blood. It had him struggling with the vampirism, and it also had the superhero tie-ins of like the post-credit scene where Charles Dance and him are in modern times, and now he
Mhm.
gets to join, I guess, Aaron Eckhart's Frankenstein in the Universal kick-ass 2003 set Monster Universe.
Sure.
And all of that stuff I thought had more of just a better handle on what this type of movie needed to be.
Mhm.
And I don't know, Dracula Untold is just a so much more fun movie.
I never did see it. It looked totally ridiculous, and I do appreciate a good over the top movie, so I should probably check it out.
Yeah, there's definitely a portion when they're doing the montage of him figuring out his powers, especially the flying thing, and Luke
Hmm.
Evans sells it like a guy from like the 14th century who has absolutely no idea that any of this is in the realm of possibility. Like his
Right.
face is stunned. There's a whole sequence where he's trying to avoid the sun, and it plays kind of like a Metal Gear Solid game. It's kick ass.
Nice.
I don't know. It's just like a fun little again, those superhero flashes in an otherwise horror film because it is,
Hmm.
dealing with some heavier shit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll go to my next piece, and honestly, with all the production hell that Morbius went through, I'm not even sure it might have already been shooting before this movie came out. But at the very beginning of the pandemic, right before it hit, we had a Vin Diesel superhero movie called Bloodshot, which was just a mess. But
Man.
but basically, a superhero that's born from science experiments and then apparently can just do anything. And that's kind of where I'm going with this piece. Morbius, yeah, living vampire. Does that mean you should be able to, let's just go down the list, fly, have bat sonar, be able to be completely invincible, be able to just throw people through everything? Like, it's just anything he needs to do at any given moment. Yeah, he has that power too.
He's
And
the
that's
MacGyver of vampires, man.
that's him, man. That's him. And yeah, and that's kind of what I took away from Bloodshot back when I saw it. One of the last movies before the shutdown.
Bloodshot is has a very, very warm place in my heart. It is the very first screening I attended as press. It is the
Nice.
last movie I saw before the pandemic, like all the way until Halloween Kills.
Wow.
And where I feel like I was gonna include this is one of my puzzle pieces too, is
Mm-hmm.
because they're both vanity projects disguised as superhero movies.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
this is Vin Diesel trying to tell you that he's the coolest motherfucker in the room. He's the
Yep.
guy that can get blown up into a billion bits on an almost molecular level and restructure himself. And I'm pretty sure both movies have a sequence where the hero and the villain are falling from the sky and it's shot with PS2 graphics to the point that where I thought if I pressed the triangle button at the right time, I would hit the quick time moment and
Yeah.
punch the dude in
Yeah.
the face. Like all of that to me is basically what Morbius is. Because
Sure.
it's Jared Leto as executive producer, and I'm watching interviews with him, and the first words out of his mouth are like, "I love elevated horror," and I was like, "Shut the fuck up, you pretentious asshole!" Like,
Me.
yeah, he's like, "I worked on this, like the best of Marvel and DC are the best of any movie. I put everything into this, as I do with every one of my movies." I'm like, "Shut up." Jesus, get over yourself. Like at least when Vin Diesel does it, he does it in Triple X Return of Xander Cage with this insane like the camera pans up over a bed where his
Mhm.
harem of women that are 30 years younger than him are like scrolled up and you see Vin Diesel's bloated body sitting in bed and he's like, I'm the baddest motherfucker there is. And I'm like, I can't argue with that. With
Right.
Jared Leto, it's just like you're a weirdo who happens to hire people to be in your projects.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
oh
I don't know if you've read
God.
any of those interviews Daniel Espinosa, the director, has been doing, but it sounds
Yeah,
like it was a process getting through this. I
I
don't
feel
know.
bad. Like
Yeah.
I'm glad that we recorded this after the Up Rocks thing that Mike Ryan interviewed
Yeah.
Espinosa for came out, because just Leto faking disability after the scenes of like, look, there's method, and then there's just being a dick, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's almost like describing pornography. You can't really explain when someone's fully gone method to being a dick, but you know it when you see it. You know a
Right.
pretentious douchebag when you see one, and Leto is. And as good as Leto can be, and
Right.
I like him in some parts of this movie, just
Sure.
all that extra baggage on top of it feels like it just isn't worth it for Morbius.
Yeah.
Morbius.
For an SSU movie or whatever we're calling it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy.
Oh man.
What do you got for your next piece?
My next piece is gonna be like a smattering of stuff because I just saw it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, any Spider-Man movie wherever he like swings through the city, which is like that swinging montage through the city, very much felt like when Morbius gets his powers and is like going around traveling, so to
Yeah.
speak. There's the opening credits are actually kind of kick ass. This like bisexual color scheme that's got these weird like it almost looks like that one movie, The Loft, from like a February long ago, where these
Yeah.
like sort of clinically clean titles, and it's like this is supposed to be a superhero movie, but then there's like this
I
weird
thought of A Cure for Wellness, actually.
yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Okay,
solid too.
that's a sister project, I think, to Morbius. But
Sure.
no, watching that scene open and it has this like fake Danny Elfman score going on. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of Spider-Man in here. And then the montage when he's trying to figure out his powers while he's recording himself on the recorder, it's Iron Man.
Yeah.
It's just that scene from Iron Man. And then the bulk of the conflict of the movie is just the Incredible Hulk from 2008. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a scientist trying to fix his own disease. He has this other scientist as a romantic interest who's, they're helping him out. There's a guy who becomes a darker alternate version, angry version of himself that,
Yeah.
is totally willing to skirt the moral qualms that the character has. And
Yeah.
they have this giant third act climax where they're beating the shit out of each other and collateral damage ensues. Like,
Yeah.
and I know there's a decent chunk of the Marvel movies, like even Iron Man or like Black Panther has, or Ant Man has the whole like hero and then alternately colored villain.
Sure.
But
Sure.
yeah, I feel like Incredible Hulk is the one that, at least aesthetically as well, fits Morbius the most.
Yeah.
It's like, you're hodgepodge, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a bunch of these as little mini pieces as well. I mean, I can't remember because I pretty much every superhero movie I watch once on opening weekend and then never again. And so I don't really remember little plot details, but I mean, I'm sure it was either Iron Man 1 or 2 where the villain is just made of the same thing that made Iron Man, and like,
Yeah.
and Black Panther, they're best friends that eventually go on to be, enemies. And it's a lot of these same beats that I think a lot of these superhero movies take. And so, yeah, I think all of those work. And of course, going back to Spider-Man movies for a lot of the styling. I mean, I think the number one thing a lot of people who have liked Morbius or at least didn't hate it like us, are saying is that it's kind of a throwback to early 2000s superhero movies. And I mean, the best of the bunch are those Spider-Mans.
Yeah. But it's weird. You watch something because I while preparing for this, I watched Ben Affleck's Daredevil, which Espinosa has cited
Yeah.
as the inspiration for when his bat sonar goes and you see these sort of like puffy audio waves turn into spectral forms
Yeah.
on the screen. Like, there is so much more just, there's no good way to say it, but style oozing out
Mm.
of Affleck's Batman. There's no type of insert shot. Like, he goes back to his apartment and he spins three combination locks and just stops them on the right number every
Mm.
time. There's so much Catholic imagery that's in that Daredevil movie. There's like close-ups of him just like bleeding and like he's like taking a shower in Epsom salt, like a bath in Epsom salt because he's wounded after all the fighting. And there's
Yeah.
so much more tragedy and actual like pain in that kind of stuff than anything in Morbius. I
Yeah.
watched Ambulance yesterday and coming
Mm.
out of it, comparing Morbius to this, Morbius feels like everything and nothing at the same time. Because it resembles so many other movies, but at the same time, because you resemble so many other movies, you don't resemble what a Morbius movie would be.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. There's no point to any of it. It's just like, wouldn't this be cool? You brought up PlayStation 2 graphics earlier. That's what I was reminded of with the bat sonar. I was like, this is a video game, basically. It's a video game mechanic and very basic. But
Oh, we forgot
oh,
Aquaman. The
okay, yeah.
whole yeah, because Aquaman can talk to fish, and that moment when he's like, I'm gonna summon my brothers in the bat army, that was like the one moment where I thought, okay, if he actually like goes into the whole I am a bat but bigger
Mm-hmm.
psychology, I'd kind of be down with it just because I want to see Jared Leto be weird and like be method as a bat.
We
Like, I
needed
want to see
more
him
of
try to
that.
fly.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
But yeah, Aquaman, that's a mini puzzle piece too,
Throw it in
because he can
there.
talk to bats.
For sure. I will bring in a couple more mini puzzle pieces while we're at it. These will be my last two, but they're both small little details. The usual suspects for the scene where Milo shows up to visit Morbius in jail, and He's disabled, of course, through the whole movie, but then the reveal that he's not anymore, and he's been taking this bat stuff to turn him into a vampire, is he left his crutch behind, and so he's been faking the disability through that whole scene. So that reminded me of The Usual Suspects. And then also with Milo, which, by the way, Matt Smith, best part about this movie, having just so much fun with this, reminded me a lot of Ewan McGregor's performance as Black Mask in Birds of Prey.
Okay.
Just super over the top, super ridiculous, just having a ball. More of that energy is what this movie needed.
Absolutely. To piggyback off that, Matt Smith's dance sequence being like Toby Kebbell's dance to Psycho Killer and Bloodshot. Like
Yeah,
there's
sure.
just a random moment where the villain starts dancing, or hell, like the weird Ex Machina dances that show up for no real good reason other than fuck it, it's happening now and it's
Yeah, why
great,
not?
and you either did with it. Like tertiary puzzle piece. Matt Smith is doing the new version of Christopher Walken in the Fat Boy Slim music video, Weapon of Choice.
There we
where he's
go.
dancing through the fucking library and shit. Matt Smith is having so much fun in this. And considering the last like big budget thing I really saw him in was Genesis. I haven't seen Soho yet. God, I need to. But in Terminator Genesis, he just looks so tired and sad really to be there. And in this one, he's like, I get to like open my mouth and scream and dance, and I don't know why I'm so rich, but whatever, let's do it. I love that this is a movie. I love that this is a movie where they tell you the kid's actual name. He's Lucian. That's the name of the character, but Morbius bullies him into being Milo. And then the rest of the movie, including the fake adoptive father who's supposed to care for these people as people, calls him Milo. Like, what is happening?
That is really weird. It's insane, actually.
Like, the movie bullies this guy into having another name.
By the way, also, while we're at it, talking about that, the whole name change and everything, the doctor that was taking care of them, it's supposed to be like 25 years later and looks exactly the same. Jared Harris's character. That's pretty great.
Why waste pennies? Like, don't do this to Jared Harris.
We don't need
Jared. We don't need to like put more makeup on Jared Harris. Like, let this man just like slide through this movie unfazed.
He already has to deal with Leto for 2 months of shooting or whatever. So why put him through all the makeup? You know. So, do you have any other pieces you wanted to bring up?
Not really.
Yeah,
it's just one of those. The one thing I do want to mention is like I don't know whose big brained idea it was to have Tyrese as like part of a buddy cop idea, but have him be like the straight laced one.
Yeah,
like I don't know who thought that was a good idea.
I have a question for you. Okay, I was watching this movie, and there's the chase sequence where Tyrese is chasing Morbius, and maybe I just completely misunderstood something. He stopped Morbius's powers with his mind.
Wait, what?
Doesn't he? Like, what happened there?
Hang on. Go
what
back.
Happened?
I thought we were going to talk about another version of that scene where like Morbius is supposed to be able to like fly now, right? Or he's supposed to be able to like go from like 1 story to like 4 stories with a swoop. And I get it because he has superpowers. Did Tyrese just ride the bullet elevator to the roof?
Yeah, that too.
That's like, what I was concerned about. But what were you saying about mind powers?
He's about to fly off. Morbius is about to fly off the top of that building, and he's just somehow stopped. And I was like, oh shit, Tyrese has some kind of powers. Why did he stop?
Yeah.
Like, it made no sense. There's no reference to it whatsoever.
He doesn't have to. But they put him in handcuffs and they take him to jail.
Yeah. Like, how did they stop him? They don't actually, like... it's just a given. Did he
just give himself up willingly, I guess?
Exactly. So that scene left me wondering, like, does Tyrese have special powers? And then of course it never comes up again for the whole movie. I was very confused by that.
I genuinely thought that just like he's like, oh, I'm not gonna run from the cops anymore. This has probably gone too far.
It's a weird
at the same time,
I'm a vampire. I'm not going to run anymore.
Yeah, like, I'm a vampire. I can get out of here if I really, really wanted to.
So weird.
God.
I don't know. I'm sure some person who knows the character will tell me that I'm completely wrong and like, oh, you just don't understand. Morbius just wanted to be caught or something. I don't know, but yeah, the Tyrese character seems like it was underwritten.
Look, one of the worst things to be in this world is like a Morbius stan in the same vein of a Zack Snyder stan.
Oh no,
Like, look, don't do that to yourself, please.
just
Have
don't.
some self-respect.
Don't do it. Yeah, I think we covered Morbius pretty well. I think we got to all the points.
Yeah.
Is there another movie you watched recently you want to bring up and recommend to our listeners?
Dude, dude. I almost hijacked this review today because I saw Ambulance yesterday, and
Yeah,
Ambulance is so much fun.
I'm going this weekend. I can't
Dude,
wait.
it is, I swear to you, it's the fastest 2 hours and 20 minutes. It legitimately 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's fast as hell, and Bay is firing on every cylinder. There's
Oof.
drone shots. There's practical explosions. Jake Gyllenhaal and Yaya understood the assignment. They know it's a Michael Bay movie. They know it lives in some sort of absurdity, but God, they are going for Oscars. Oh, we didn't mention. I did mention Adria Arjona in this movie. I feel bad because I legitimately was calling her Asa Gonzalez for most of it because I did not know it was not Asa Gonzalez. Asa Gonzalez in Ambulance, the best role she's ever had.
Wow.
And I know
okay.
that's not saying the most, but she's so good in it.
Yeah.
And really, like, it's a great character for her. Like, I'm super happy. There's, the Michael Bay has like the cast of thousands, right? Like, he'll throw random dudes and give everybody a bit part. Everybody's bit part is great. The action completely nonstop. I love these like little insert shots that don't really make sense. They're just kind of like periods at the end of a sentence, but they're like murals on LA.
Yeah.
And I missed big blockbusters that just had random splashes of color for no good reason. Like there's a sequence where a guy is being chased and he falls on top of like a carton of green peppers. And God, if those green peppers, even on the ground, didn't look amazingly delicious.
Ooh.
Yes. Yes. Ambulance is like, it's so good, and nobody is prepared for how kick ass this film is going to be.
I don't usually read tweets on the podcast, but I just saw this tweet like right before we started recording from @NickNewman. I'm so old. I saw Michael Bay go from consensus pick for Death of Cinema to I'm rooting for this new movie because we rarely have studio films by real filmmakers, and that is so true. Like that's exactly how I feel, man. I'm so excited.
The auteur theory guys need to go to bat for Bay because it really is like peering into his brain. And I didn't know this. So Morbius is a $90 million movie, right?
Yeah.
Ambulance was apparently made for 40.
Right.
And when you watch it, I don't know how. Like, I don't know how you could have gotten away with this, especially in COVID for 40 mil. But it looks great. Yaya is going for it. He's a fantastic star. Him and Gyllenhaal have an amazing chemistry. There's a bunch of like little Bay nods that are in it that are just so much fun. And God, in a movie, I can't believe that I live in a world where like Morbius came out 1 week and 2 weeks later we get something as kick-ass and so fresh and so much fun as Ambulance. So yeah, don't watch Morbius, watch Ambulance.
Yes. good.
And I'll review that later down the line when I'm not completely incoherent and just foaming at the mouth with love for this thing.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Daniel, tell people where they can find you and your podcast.
All right. My podcast is The Movies. It is a podcast for people that like listening to people talk about movies while you're driving to work or doing dishes. It's one of those just hang out, I really enjoy having these like couch side conversations. I like talking to people. So if you're into just having conversations with a friend about movies, it's a pretty self-explanatory podcast. You can find it on most of your podcast distributors as just The Movies. And you can follow me on Twitter @themovies_pod.
Awesome. If you ever need a guest, I'm here.
Will do.
Let me know.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Man. It's going to be a fun time.
I'm so happy to finally get you back on the show. We last talked about baby teeth, and now we talked about vampire teeth. So that was
Hello? Can you hear us? Hello? you hear us?
Hello. We're in.
Hello, listeners of the verse. If you're hearing this, we're already dead.
What are you talking about, Norm?
Wait, Emilia. We're not telling them we're dead?
No.
Aww.
Don't worry, Norm. With you at the helm, I'm sure the news of our demise is right around the corner. Why are we here?
We are breaking into your social media feed to tell you all about our podcast, The Verse. Lucas, tell them about it.
The Verse covers pop culture, movies, TV, and your favorite cinematic universes.
That's where we got our name from. Cinematic Universe. Verse. Get it? We're the Verse.
Yes, Bridget, they understand. Now, can we get this moving along? I have a detonator to assemble.
On the verse, 4 human hosts and 1 annoying robot sidekick
I heard that.
bring a fresh approach and insights to the entertainment you love most.
4 hosts with 4 unique perspectives. Oh yeah. And then there's Cronsworth.
Thank you so much for that rousing introduction. On the verse, we also discuss the movies and the shows of Marvel, Star Wars, DC, and more. We cover so much, it's shocking that these humans can even keep up.
We think The Verse is something you need to add to your podcast library.
Oh yeah, and one more important thing. We've been to the future, and we have a message for you. We do get better.
Yeah, we recommend you listen from the first episode. They're really great and get even better.
So much better.
In the earlier episodes, they haven't even had the pleasure of meeting me yet. And somehow, against all odds, they still remain quite entertaining.
Shut up, Cronsworth.
If I were them, I'd watch my tone. I'm just about done assembling my death laser.
Find us on Twitter at The Versecast, and also all your favorite podcast locations.
Just search for The Verse and look for the big glowing V logo.
Welcome to The Verse.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Daniel Barrios from the Movies Podcast about Morbius. And for everybody out there listening, I just want to say thank you so much for continuing to listen to Piecing It Together. A lot of new listeners lately, and really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed wherever it is you listen to podcasts, and if it happens to be one of those apps with a 5-star button, we would really appreciate it if you hit that button, maybe left a little review. That would be awesome too. You could also follow us on social media. On Twitter, I'm active all day, every day, way too much, at PiecingPod. And I'm also slowly but surely working on the Instagram a little bit. You can also find our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And don't forget about our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon. And, if you ever want to get in touch, if you have some puzzle pieces you think we might have missed out on or something like that, I actually had a few others on my list. Me and Daniel were talking about it after the show. I was going to bring up Twilight because the vampire who doesn't want their friend to become a vampire too. We had a few other pieces as well. I know he was thinking about bringing up The Crow, of course, and also The Machinist. So, if you ever have other puzzle pieces you think that should have been brought to the conversation, get in touch on social media, like I said, at PiecingPod or in our Facebook group, or also you can just email me, bydavidrosen@gmail.com. Also, always looking for new guests, so get in touch about that as well. So let's close this thing out with a piece of music like I always do, and I should play something dark and vampire-y. Yeah, vampire-y, that's a word. I'm going to play a track from one of my free albums that's exclusively available on my Bandcamp. The album is called Like Ashes, and the song is called Scarecrow. I think I played it on the show a long time ago. It's been a while, so let's go Scarecrow. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.